Money is nothing, a fiction, a shared delusion. Its value is not inherent. It is a collective agreement, a fragile promise. When that promise breaks, consequences are not merely economic. They are existential. History offers stark warnings. No example is more visceral, more devastating than Weimar Germany's hyperinflation. It stands as the ultimate testament. An empire's own currency can become its greatest enemy, an act of economic suicide executed from within. Germany's post-First World War economic ruin was multifaceted. It was fundamentally rooted in an insurmountable debt trap. The nation's industrial capacity was shattered. Unemployment soared. The existing war debt was immense. An impoverished populace could not be taxed effectively. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed punitive reparations. The initial sum, 132 billion gold marks, approximately $33 billion USD at the time. This was an astronomical figure. It exceeded Germany's entire national wealth. It surpassed its capacity for export earnings for decades. This financial burden was not merely an economic transfer, it was a systemic destabilizer. The German state was obligated to pay an annual installment of 2 billion gold marks, plus 26% of its export earnings. This created an immediate, persistent fiscal deficit. The government, already burdened by its own war debts, faced an impossible position. It could not raise sufficient taxes. Its populace was impoverished. It could not borrow internationally. Its pariah status and existing obligations were too great. The initial response was simple. Print paper money. Cover expenses. Crucially, purchase foreign currency for reparation payments. This strategy initiated devaluation. Controlled at first, then rapidly accelerating. The underlying mechanism was clear. The state's inability to balance its budget through conventional means. It resorted to monetary expansion. This was the first critical step. The mechanics of collapse began. A deliberate choice. Finance sovereign debt. Not through productive output, not through equitable taxation, but through the erosion of currency value. The 132 billion gold marks in reparations became an anchor. Symbolic, material. Dragging the German economy into a self-reinforcing cycle. Debt. Devaluation, destruction. This was not an external attack. It was an internal economic implosion, triggered by a debt burden deemed unpayable. The trajectory from moderate inflation to hyperinflation in Weimar Germany was direct. It was a consequence of escalating reliance on the printing press. As the mark depreciated, imported goods surged in cost. Essential foodstuffs, raw materials. This fueled domestic price increases. The government could not collect sufficient tax revenue. Its currency rapidly devalued. Reparation demands continued. It responded with increased money creation. This was the core feedback loop. More money printed. Faster its value eroded. More money the government needed to meet obligations. In January 1923, France and Belgium occupied the Ruhr industrial region, Germany's primary economic engine. They cited Germany's failure to deliver reparation payments. This external shock exacerbated the crisis. The German government supported passive resistance workers in the Ruhr. It prevented economic collapse in the region. It printed even more money. The Reichsbank, the central bank, operated under political pressure. It issued vast quantities of unbacked paper marks. The velocity of money accelerated dramatically. Citizens observed rapid depreciation. They spent marks immediately upon receipt. They converted them into tangible assets, or foreign currency. This behavior was rational. In an inflationary environment, it further reduced the currency's purchasing power. Prices began to double, then triple, then multiply by orders of magnitude. Within days, sometimes hours, wages were adjusted daily, sometimes twice daily. They never kept pace. Hyper-accelerating inflation overwhelmed them. The physical act of printing money became a logistical challenge. Factories operated 24 hours a day. They produced banknotes, worthless by the time they reached circulation. This was not merely an economic phenomenon. It was state-sponsored liquidation of the nation's savings, of its wealth. a systemic transfer from currency holders to debtors, including the state itself. The printing press, intended as a tool of fiscal management, became the primary instrument of economic destruction. Weimar hyperinflation transcended economic statistics. It dismantled the social contract. It obliterated the middle class. Those who diligently saved their earnings saw their life's work evaporate. Bank accounts, government bonds, life insurance policies, all became worthless. A lifetime of accumulated wealth could not purchase a loaf of bread. Fixed income earners, pensioners, civil servants, they were pauperized overnight. Farmers, conversely, paid off mortgages with virtually worthless currency. Industrialists with significant debt benefited immensely. This arbitrary redistribution of wealth created profound social divisions and resentment. The concept of value itself became meaningless. Children played with stacks of worthless banknotes. People carried cash in wheelbarrows to purchase basic necessities. Wages were paid in large suitcases, only to be spent immediately. Prices surged again. Bartering became common. Society reverted to a pre-monetary system. The psychological impact was profound. Trust in institutions shattered. The government, the central bank, the legal system, the very fabric of society began to fray. The middle class, traditionally the stabilizing force, systematically liquidated. Their economic ruin fueled deep betrayal and despair. It made them susceptible to radical political ideologies promising order, promising stability. This was the social cost of hyperinflation, not just economic hardship, but the erosion of civic trust, the breakdown of communal cohesion, the creation of fertile ground for extremism. The Weimar experience unequivocally demonstrates this. A cost of living crisis, when driven to its extreme by currency collapse, is not merely about prices. It is about the destruction of societal bedrock. It is about the profound destabilization of the political landscape. The economic suicide of the currency, it paved the way for the political suicide of the Republic. Weimar Germany's hyperinflation is not an isolated anomaly. It is a stark warning. It echoes in the current global economic landscape. Today, the world grapples with persistent, pervasive cost of living crises, driven by inflationary pressures. Modern inflation has not reached Weimar levels, but the underlying mechanisms share unsettling parallels. Consider the contemporary debt trap. Global sovereign debt levels are unprecedented, exacerbated by pandemic-era stimulus packages and ongoing geopolitical conflicts. The United States' national debt exceeded $34 trillion in 2024. Japan's debt-to-GDP ratio surpassed 250% in 2023. The Eurozone's aggregate debt-to-GDP remained elevated post-COVID-19. Many nations operate with significant fiscal deficits. They rely on continuous borrowing, or implicitly on central bank intervention. This mirrors Germany's post-WWI fiscal predicament. Triggers and magnitudes differ. The core issue remains. The concept of money printing has evolved. Physical presses may not churn out banknotes at the same rate. Modern central banks engage in quantitative easing, QE. They inject trillions of units of currency into the financial system through asset purchases. The U.S. Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded from approximately $4 trillion in early 2020 to nearly $9 trillion by April 2022. The European Central Bank's Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program, PEP, deployed $1.85 trillion by March 2022. The Bank of Japan has maintained aggressive asset purchases for decades. This expansion of the monetary base is intended to stimulate economies. It also devalues currency. It fuels asset price inflation. It creates a wealth effect for some. It erodes purchasing power for others. This is a sophisticated, less visible form of monetary expansion. External shocks, critical factors in Weimar's collapse, are prevalent today. Global supply chain disruptions occurred from 2020-2022, triggered by COVID-19 lockdowns. The ever-given blockage of the Suez Canal in March 2021 caused billions in trade delays. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, beginning in February 2022, severely impacted energy and food markets. European natural gas prices spiked above $300 MAUI in August 2022. Global wheat prices rose over 60% in early 2022. These curtailed supply. Demand remained high, creating inflationary pressure, forcing governments and central banks into difficult policy choices. Specific companies suffered. Auto manufacturers like Ford and General Motors faced semiconductor shortages. Retailers like Target and Walmart absorbed increased shipping costs. The pattern of liquidating the middle class is observable, not as immediate or absolute as in Weimar, but persistent inflation disproportionately affects fixed-income earners. Savers, those whose wages do not keep pace. U.S. median real wage growth was near zero in 2022-2023. Despite nominal increases. UK real wages fell by 3% in 2022. The US Consumer Price Index peaked at 9.1% in June 2022. The Eurozone Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices, HICP, reached 10.6% in October 2022. Their real wealth diminishes, their savings erode, their standard of living declines. This subtle long-term erosion of economic security is insidious. It is a less dramatic but equally potent wealth transfer, benefiting debtors, benefiting asset holders, at the expense of those reliant on currency stability. The mechanisms are present: significant sovereign debt, monetary expansion, external shocks, subsequent pressure on the middle class. Weimar's historical context serves as a powerful reminder. These elements, under specific conditions, can coalesce into catastrophic economic and social breakdown. The Weimar Republic's economic collapse offers critical insights into currency fragility, into the profound consequences of unchecked fiscal and monetary policies, uncontrolled national debt, exacerbated by external shocks, financed by relentless money supply expansion. It inevitably erodes a currency's value. This erosion is not benign. It is systemic liquidation, primarily targeting the savings and the stability of the middle class. The historical record confirms this. Economic instability leads to social unrest. It breaks down civic trust. It creates fertile ground for political extremism. The Empires.Inc. thesis highlights internal failure. Weimar is a paramount example of this internal decay, the instrument of economic exchange. It became the ultimate tool of national destruction. The current global economic environment presents parallels: elevated sovereign debt, ongoing monetary expansion, persistent external shocks. These demand careful consideration. Specific conditions and magnitudes differ, but underlying principles of economic cause and effect remain immutable. The lesson from Weimar is clear. Hyperinflation is not imminent in every modern economy. But fundamental choices regarding debt management, central bank independence, fiscal responsibility, they carry profound long-term consequences. Printing money alleviates debt. It transfers wealth. It liquidates segments of society. It preserves the system. Outcomes are often destabilizing. History does not repeat precisely. Its patterns frequently rhyme. The Weimar warning is a stark reminder. Currency stability is the bedrock of economic prosperity and social cohesion. To disregard the mechanics of its collapse is to ignore a fundamental lesson in how empires commit economic suicide from within. An empire's currency is its lifeblood. To drain it is not collapse. It is self-execution.